Thank you, Dr. Roshni. We shall now move on to our next oration, which is the Professor Dr. U.K. Sheth oration. It is an absolute honor to introduce Dr. U.K. Sheth, who was the professor and head of the Department of Pharmacology from 1956 to 1978. Dr. Sheth established a clinical drug trial unit with a 30-bedded clinical pharmacology ward in our hospital with support from CSIR and the pharmaceutical industry. It was the first of its kind in the country and was later recognized by the WHO. Even in those days, he carried out drug surveillance and started an adverse drug reaction monitoring program. He received national acclaim for his contribution to clinical pharmacology and is rightfully called as the father of clinical pharmacology in India. He worked as a WHO consultant on several committees and was the recipient of the B.C. Roy and the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Memorial Award. The Department of Pharmacology and Therapeutics considers it a privilege to hold an oration to honor this eminent scientist. We are also extremely delighted to have Dr. Anil Sheth, son of Dr. U.K. Sheth, amongst us today. Dr. Anil Sheth is the founding member of the Houston Nephrology Group and is board certified in internal medicine and nephrology and has practiced nephrology in the Houston area since 1980. Sir has joined us with his wife, who is also an alumnus of St. G.S.MEDICAL College. We welcome you, sir, and we thank you for gracing the occasion today. I now request the chairpersons for this oration, Dr. Nilima Shirsagar ma'am and Dr. Sangeeta Rawat, as well as the distinguished orator, Dr. Satish KHADILKAR, to please take seats on the dais. I request Pallavi to offer them Tilgul as a mark of our respect. It is indeed our privilege to introduce our chairpersons today. Our first chairperson is Dr. Nilima Shirsagar. Dr. Shirsagar is National Chair of Clinical Pharmacology, ICMR, New Delhi, President of the South Asian Chapter of American College of Clinical Pharmacology, and member of various WHO committees. Ma'am was the former Dean of our institute and former Acting Vice Chancellor of the State Health Science University. She has over 200 publications featuring in the Lancet and the British Journal of Clinical Pharmacology, among other reputed journals. We welcome you, ma'am, and thank you for coming today. Our second chairperson for today is Dr. Sangeeta Rawat. Dr. Rawat is professor and head of the Department of Neurology at St. G.S.MEDICAL College and KM Hospital and is one of the most renowned neurologists and epileptologists in our country. Ma'am is known for her expertise in epilepsy management and also has several publications to her credit. She is also the founder of the Comprehensive Epilepsy Care Center. We welcome you, ma'am, and thank you for gracing the occasion. I will now request Dr. Shirsagar to say a few words about Dr. U.K. Sheth.
Thank you very much for that introduction. It's a great pleasure and privilege to be here chairing this very important Dr. U.K. Sheth oration. I thank Dr.SUPE. It's great to see friends, Madam Parimala here, Harish Shetty with his fantastic, fantabulous oration, Nilima Darkar and Avi Patwardhan, who have been my teachers, and all others present and past teachers from here, and of course Anil Sheth and Richa Sheth too. You've seen here Dr. U.K. Sheth's biodata or CV as it's now called being read, but I'm going to tell you in a few minutes what is not given in that CV or biodata. He was a teacher par excellence, and Supe sir, there was no medical education technology at that time, but he would start his pharmacology tutorials by asking us, what patient have you seen in the ward today? What medicines did he get? His lectures would also start with describing the patients. He would talk about epilepsy patients and tell us what epileptic patients' symptoms and signs are like. But he never lost sight of the experimental pharmacology techniques involved. And when he was talking of psychiatry, Harish, he would show us animals, the effect of antipsychotic drugs on animals, how they would be quietened, and how a mouse and a rat could be put together in the same cage without each fighting with each other. Lessons of antipsychotic drugs. He was a mentor par excellence, not only we as students, but later on. The amazing thing was that how he followed us after we finished MD and after we had even left the department. I still remember my first sort of seminar that I gave in the department. Some of you will start talking and giving. And I remember, not only did he tear me out by the fantastic in-depth knowledge that he had on the subject, but as a mentor, he told me that when you're giving a talk, don't keep moving the chair, because nervous as I was, I stood there shaking the chair all the time. So he said, don't keep shaking the chair like that. He later on also followed us and made sure that we were presented with or told of many other opportunities around. He was also a fantastic head of the department. I still remember that as a student, I broke some very expensive equipment. I was petrified. It didn't affect him. He said, I'm glad you're using the equipment. Doesn't matter if it breaks, we can always replace the equipment. Then when he would walk down the corridor, he would write his signature if there was dust on the top of any display glasses. Just out of shame, the ward attendant or the departmental attendant would quickly come and wipe that. He didn't tell him wipe it, but he just signed on it. When he went as WHO consultant to Nepal and then Geneva, he continued to have greatly in touch with what was happening in the department and what we were doing, and he was always communicating to us what he was doing. He was very disappointed when I became the dean. He thought I'm going to leave my pharmacology behind now, and when it did happen, you can't be doing pharmacology and also being the dean, especially not the dean of this great prestigious institute. So I'm sure now he will be happy now to know that after all that I'm back to pharmacology as a national chair in clinical pharmacology. We all remember him very much, and I hope that this little CV that I have told of him is something which the students can demand from the teachers now. Look, this is what Dr. Yukeshe did, why don't you also do that? And I very much look forward to Dr. KHADILKAR's oration here. We have known each other for many years. He's a fantastic neurologist, without doubt, and as we will hear him, a great physician too. And thank you again for inviting me here.
Thank you, ma'am, for enlightening us about Dr. Yukeshe. I would now request Dr. Sangeeta Rawat to introduce the orator for the Professor Yukeshe oration, Dr. Satish KHADILKAR.
Good morning to all, and thank you for calling me to chair the session, respected Dean Sir and all other dear colleagues. It's a great pleasure to introduce Satish, who is, apart from what is shown on the slides, I would like to tell, first we got introduced when I joined in neurology here as a student, and he was a lecturer at JJ. And we all used to love to go and attend his clinic of such a handsome neurologist. But unfortunately, both of us were married that time. But his clinics, since that time, we know that he was such an excellent academician and teacher. So today, he has claimed such heights in neurology world of not only India but abroad. So after finishing his lecture post for a few years, then he said, now neurology has become a super specialty. It's like, I am into epilepsy. He decided he went into the muscle and nerve. So he spent quite a lot of time in Australia, New Zealand and then France and got expertise in muscle and nerve. And today he is also he is well known in muscle and nerve as an authority in India, also abroad. So anywhere we still as a neurologist come across any difficult case of muscle and nerve, we always send to him for a final opinion. And he has published n number of genetic papers on muscle and nerve, and we really value the whole neurologists in all over India, value his opinion to a great extent. So that's really hats off to him that he has developed such an expertise in this muscle and nerve disorders. And apart from that, he has been professor and head of department of JJ, and it was really sad that everybody in JJ, and we all miss him, that now he's no more in a teaching hospital, but he continues to teach even at Bombay Hospital. Recently, we jointly convened a program of 3 days intensive teaching, exam-oriented teaching to the PG students, and that was one of the great things which he has started. He's also written many books because I think he can relate with patients, relate with student mind very well. So what are our exam-oriented problems? What are our, when we go to present cases, what are our problems? What DDs we require? So he has written very simple books, but they are of great help, because now I know my son is also doing MD, and my students who are doing DM, they value his books very well. And apart from that, so that's how his 6 books, many chapters, 150 publications, and he has definitely got a best teacher award at GSMC and JJ because he is a very good teacher. So it's a great pleasure, Satish, to welcome you to give this oration. And of late, he has been giving oration not on the neurology. This aspect of humanitarian ground and different aspect of looking at the neurology and as a physician, and looking at different way to the patients and to as a physician relationship, that I have heard his such talks, and they are much more interesting than the usual neurology talks. So I am sure you all are going to enjoy his talk. Thank you.
Good morning to all of you. Before I start, let me say that I learned a very, very important lesson this morning. That I have to send my slides to Dr. Parker. I can't make them myself. Okay. Thank you very much for asking me to be here. It's indeed a privilege and a pleasure for me. As you heard from Sangeeta, I spent my life in JJ, and we are across the big bridge. But whenever some of my friends or colleagues ask me, my son or daughter wants to take in medicine, where should I ask him to go? I must to say, I tell them K here. So, why did I choose this topic? I mean, I'm a neurologist. Why did I choose this topic? It's because I think it's quite relevant to the way things are today, that we sort of introspect a little and take a little look at what we are and what we need to be. That's why I will try and elucidate these two aspects of the physician. So let's start. It's a flashback, 1983, when I was doing my MD in medicine. A lot of you are young here and obviously doing your residency. So I declared a death. I was on the ICU posting. You know, time was much different then. And you would just open the door of the ICU, call the relevant person's relative and say, look, so-and-so's dead. The next thing we would do, that's what I did, is to tell the watchman, don't allow the relatives to cry here. Let them go somewhere else. Close the door. Somebody said, how about a good dinner? I forgot all about that death and I went and had dinner. In 1983, death of encephalitis in the ICU meant nothing to me. It was just 4 deaths I declared every day. What's there? 2017, last year, in Bombay Hospital, a boy died of encephalitis under my care. He came early to us, we did whatever we had to do. The patient's relatives and we both felt that we did whatever we could, the boy died. I couldn't get him out of my system even after 2 weeks. And this is one family who thanked me for having done everything. It was their only son. And I kept on thinking, look, they're going to take this body back. He's the only son. What's going to happen to the family now? How are they going to cope up? So what changed between 1983, a young rash resident who just went out for dinner, didn't care, and 2017, an older consultant who can't get that boy out of the mind? So, what changed? I think as I look back, I realize, like so many of you who are senior here, that as physicians we have actually 2 roles to play. One is of the healer, and one is of the professional. The role of the professional you can divide into a scientist, a sort of practitioner of what reproducible observations that we call a science, and an organized service provider, which is another aspect that is new to Indian medicine. But as a young boy getting into medicine, what do you really think? You think you are a scientist. You have your books which teach you science, you read them, but that's it. You execute what is written in the books to your best capacity. We don't take into account the second and the more important role. So let's look at what is healing. Look at the rightmost panel. Healing doesn't mean that the damage never existed. It means that the damage no longer controls our lives. And I think it's the role of the healer to, with his science, do whatever he can, but then make the person appreciate that it's not the end of the world. Now, how long have healers been around? They have certainly been around longer than the stethoscope holding physicians. You can see all these cultures, Africans, Indians, Indian Americans, Native Americans, the Chinese, Egyptians, Nepal, Bhutan, wherever. I think traditional and spiritual healers have been practicing long before we have been around. They do not have evidence-based medicine to go with them, but they still have been healing. So, healing doesn't necessarily stand on the shoulders of evidence-based science. It's a completely different property which is neither taught in medical schools, nor is it sort of practiced later on in any organized manner. It just comes to each one of us as and when. It's optional. Now this is from William Osler, the leftmost panel. Do you want that light out as well? If the slides are not clear. Ye light pe hata dijiye. Ye pe. That makes it clear? Right, the rightmost panel, William Osler. A good doctor tends to the person who has a disease rather than just the disease itself. I mean, we must have read this again and again, but how many of us have actually taken time to practice this? Now, the healer mindset within us is a different mindset from the scientist in us. Take examples. Left hemiplegia to a neurologist is an infarct in the anterior branch of the MCA due to atherosclerosis. But to the healer, he is just half a man. Bilateral blindness to the scientist is optic neuritis requiring workup to know whether it's MS or neuromyelitis optica. But to the healer, it is a blind girl with navigating difficulties. So, I mean, the way these two elements evaluate the situation is completely different. Now look at this. This is from our Grant Medical College grand rounds, as we call them, on Tuesdays, where the exam going students present cases and the whole faculty is there and they discuss. So there was a family being discussed of spinocerebellar ataxias and slow eye movements with 4 generations being affected. So this is the de facto discussion. The assistant professor asked the student, enumerate various eye signs in ataxias and tell me names of at least 11 syndromes. Because he just finished learning his science. He knows 11 different scientific facts. He wants the student to know and elicit those 11 scientific facts. Then the associate professor says, who worked on these diseases in India? Slightly different perspective of life. And the professor says, don't forget to send him for physiotherapy, because he knows that genetic cerebral ataxias cannot be improved with medicines. And says, don't burden him with too many diagnostic tests. And then the next thing, isn't it time that we looked at antenatals to stop the transmission? I mean, it's 4 generations already. So look at how different people of different maturity looked at the same problem. The student wants to elicit the signs of cerebral ataxia best. Assistant professor has a little more knowledge and says, there are 11 types of this, can you tell me all of them? And you slowly mature into what's the issue, can you deal with it, if you can't deal with it, what can you do to prevent? Now it's taken those many years for those guys to mature this thinking, and that is a worry. Not that it doesn't develop, we all develop it, but we develop it quite slowly. So it seems that in the current medicine practice that we practice in India, healing comes very slowly and follows scientific knowledge. Okay. Now this is another point that I think you all will identify with. I mean, we are supposed to be healers. We are healers. But often we ourselves are carrying wounds that are inflicted on us while we are doing our inverted comma scientific medicine. Every physician is a wounded healer. And the classic example is Carl Jung's Chiron. Chiron is a mythological creature who was shot by Hercules with a poisoned arrow. It created a wound on his chest which never healed. But he was the great healer of men, even though he was always in pain. That's Carl Jung's Chiron, which really symbolifies the way we are today. We are expected to help others, we are expected to heal others, we are expected to treat others, but no one bothers about us as people. Now remember your time in residency, some of you are doing it now. You have a 24-hour shift, you start at 8 in the morning, 3 times the nurses' duties are changed, 3 different sets of nurses come and go, you are still in the ward. And the first thing that the boss shoots at you is, why don't you know the potassium, why don't you know the sodium? Nobody bothers whether you've eaten or not, nobody bothers whether you slept or not. So I think early on in medical career, it's hammered onto us that your time is no longer your own, your personal needs are irrelevant. Patients are so important, their illnesses are so big, that it just doesn't matter whether you are eating, whether you are sleeping, and what you feel about the whole thing. So I think this is where every medical student gets injured mentally. think it's very important to identify this happening early, because unless you are a whole, you're not going to be able to heal others. And all of us have gone through this so-called British system of medicine, have suffered long duty hours and have suffered the consequences of the long duty hours. Right. Now let's look at the other side. What is the professional physician? He's a scientist who is trained in evidence-based. And I think we always train in evidence-based from the first MBBS. That there is no problem. But we are newly learning that we are being part of a healthcare system. We are understanding our role into this big machine, and we have to link with colleagues, friends and other specialists. That is new. That's organized medicine. Up to my generation, I think we were solo workers. You could sit anywhere. For a neurologist, you just have to have a hammer with you and you can practice. But in organized medicine of today, you're not solo. You're part of the whole game. And that we have not yet learned. So within the professionalism of the physician, we have learned the science, but we haven't learned being part of the wheel yet. Okay. So just to sum up these two things, healing is actually the mandate of medicine. And professionalism is how it is organized. So we are up to a point forgetting the mandate, not training people for the mandate, and focusing on the organization and the science, of course. Now let's look at what are the issues with development of the medicine man in today's India, like so many of you who are being trained at the moment. How do you start? You catch them young. Very young and very intelligent MCQ solvers are the new soldiers. Yeah. They often do not know why they have come into medicine. If I ask you a question, do you really know why are you in medicine? How many of you really know why are you in medicine? I'll show you some videos later on. Now, these guys have given me permission to show their faces. This is from the Medical College. I hope it works. I don't know why, but this is always the death videos. Good. Sound. Sound. Yeah. Okay, doesn't matter. I will tell you what he's saying. But I actually need the voice for some further part. This fellow says that it was my father's dream. My father wanted me to be a doctor, therefore I am a doctor. How do you feel about it? He says, look, I am not sure. This fellow says that he saw a nearby general practitioner who was helping others and he was very happy with the way. So he is in medicine. So, in fact, we did a small survey in the Medical College to realize that almost 80% of the boys and girls who had come to MBBS did not have clear ideas why they are there. Somebody has come because somebody says there should be a doctor in the family. Somebody says that my parents wanted it. Somebody thought my friends went to medicine, so I came into medicine. So our soldiers' recruitment are intelligent, but they don't know what sort of battle they are taking on. What happens when they come into medicine? The training is very competitive now. I suppose KM is competition at its best. So what are they taught? You have to be better than others in the class. That's the prerequisite. Because unless you are better than others in the class, you're not going to get post-graduation. It's not that you have to be a very good doctor, you have to be better than others. So this aphorism sort of sums it beautifully. Two medical students are in a jungle and see a tiger. As one gets ready to run, the other asks him, do you really think we shall outrun the tiger? The other one replies, no, I have to only outrun you. So you have to somehow come first in the class. You have to somehow come second in the class. Okay, this again, shall we try?
What I do about medical books?
Good, good.
Actually, I don't really like to read books.
He says, I don't like to read books, but I have to read them because I have to be better than others.
That's how I will compete with my colleagues.
To compete with my colleagues. So, what should be reading like and what should be reading for? Read not to contradict and confuse, nor to believe and take for granted, nor to find talk and discourse, but to weigh and consider. I mean, medical doctors training into a science are supposed to read with this in mind, but what they actually need to do, not that they want to, they need to do. In the early training, they need to just get better than others. So the competition, the unmanageable load of information, need to store it for the next examination. All the students are populating libraries and they don't go to the wards. In all my neurology career in Grant Medical College, only 1 or 2 undergraduate students will come to the neurology ward and want to see patients. You go to the library in the evening, library is full because they have to read and solve the MCQs. So I think in our training, we're not moving them to the wards and to the patients. We are moving them to the libraries. What happens when they come to the postgraduate? There is this intrigue of the rare and the unusual. And this is, I think, because we have chosen the most intelligent guys. And then we tell them, you have to treat common disease as well. They don't like it. They are Einstein. So, in our neurology ward, whichever is the most rare disease, you will see boys and girls there, wanting to look at the science, wanting to understand that disease, the like of which they will never see in the next 2 decades. But every time I asked a DM neurology student, do you want to do a thesis on leprosy? No. Do you want to do a thesis on tuberculosis? They are garden variety diseases. They are not enough for the Einstein in them. If I ask someone, do you want to work on sarcoglycanopathies? Yes, sir. Now, sarcoglycanopathies, he may see 20 in his whole life. But he gets publication out of it. Somebody says you work on it. So I think in the postgraduate training, a lot of them are trying to feed their intellect, which treating common diseases doesn't offer. Unfortunately, our medical teacher system also does not take into account what should be taught. Because young tutors are almost always wanting to sort of impress on them that they know more. And I think at the Grant Medical College, I don't mind saying this now, that I've gone through this same problem. That when I started teaching the DM, I thought I have to establish that I am better than them. So I would keep on telling them 100 things that I had newly read. After a few years, I realized, okay, I don't need to impress upon them that I know more than them. Since they're sitting there, they must be thinking so. So I stopped bothering about syndromes. After a while, I said, look, half of what I told these guys are not realizing, they have not understood. I said, oh, I must do something to make them understand. So that's how over the years I found myself changing, and I think this happens to all of us. So I think we have to teach the young medical teachers what to teach the student, just like examiners. DM examination is often a battlefield, and often I find myself taking the role of settling down things. you are training, the best of you come into government medical colleges or municipal colleges, where there is a huge gap between your subjects and you. That gap is also an issue with building this healer potential. Like at JJ, when I was doing DM, if you asked a patient, भाई क्या तकलीफ है? तो बोलेगा साहब आप ही देखो. अरे होता क्या है? आप ही देखो. Now what rapport can you establish with such an individual easily? So you give up. You just examine him, you make up a diagnosis, say okay, good, this fellow has so and so. Also the workload. Hundreds of patients come in your OPD. Where is the time time for you to develop the system of forming a rapport? So I think these are some of the problems that are also integral to lack of the healer material. Now, since Dr. UK Seth was a pharmacologist, I thought this would be relevant in this talk. Just like you turn from a scientist into a healer scientist with time, we all seem to turn from a diagnostician to therapeutician quite late. We are interested in getting the diagnosis, and often the clinics end there. No? You come up to the diagnosis, the clinic ends there. Hardly ever do we ask कि चलो भैया अभी दोगे क्या इसको अभी आप क्या करने वाले हो? Even in the DM final exit exams, it stops at diagnosis. So they are all diagnosticians. Early doctors are diagnosticians. They have to be converted into therapeutician as early as possible, because that is what is the final output of the process of diagnosis. I think that is also quite slow and late. Also, most of us are not in the thick of drug trials and drug discoveries. So we're not really exposed to what is indeed happening in that world. And you just have to accept face value what comes to you through journals and what have you. This one of my bosses used to call the mushroom phenomenon. That mushroom is always kept in the dark, fed nonsense, and thrives on it. So whatever the drug company tells you, maybe in a good journal, you believe it. How has it come? What are the fallacies? A common doctor doesn't know. So I think trying to understand a little bit of how the drug comes, what's actually happening when you use it, also is very relevant. And I think this is what happens to most of us later on. So the young doctor has 20 medicines for each disease, and the older doctor has one for 20 diseases. If you go to very old doctors, they only bless you. Okay. So, what has our system produced in India? Intelligent individuals full of knowledge of evidence-based medicine. They've developed an ability to work long and hard. In that process, they got wounded a little, sometimes a lot, depends on the bosses who are in the front row. Our environment is generally unsuitable to develop empathy because of our numbers, socio-cultural gap between patients and trainee doctors. There is no formal training given in empathy. And therefore, I think the healer element, which I think exists in all Indians, all of us, is not that. It's just the science. Such a boy then comes to practice. So it's a new world. There's a total identity crisis. When he goes for an interview, he is asked, "Hey, DM तो सबने किया है, तूने और क्या किया?" वो तो DM का certificate लेके गया. So he realizes that whatever he has learned up to this point, ground zero, where the corporate czars will dictate today in India. That's organized medicine's entry into India. So आप कितना घंटा हमको दोगे? How much money should we give for you? So he's in a completely different world. Also, his engineering friends have already started earning. They are already in America. They are already doing blah blah blah. So he perceives the need to acquire material things very rapidly in this fast-moving world, and then it doesn't matter to some of them how they are moving. So they tend to go quite laterally. So I think in all this, the healer properties emerge with time and self-experience at a much later stage of life and career. Okay, so we come back to this question, what changed? And this is the sort of imaginary cycle that I have put in. It's based on my personal experience. Some of you may identify it, some of you may have other thoughts which you will tell later. I started off believing as a young person that competence is everything. Attitude doesn't have much. Again, I don't mind saying this. I scored well in my class. If somebody came and asked me, "Kahan se padna hai?" I said, "Ja tu pad." Don't ask me kahan se padna hai. So competence came above attitude. Attitude didn't matter. When I became a doctor, initial years I enjoyed the diagnostic challenges and therapeutic challenges. Later on, it became a routine. कि भाई ये तो 10 साल गए तो ये diagnosis तो मुझे आनी है. इसको क्या दवा देना है तो मुझे पता होना ही है. So the joy of making the diagnosis, the joy of treating started reducing. When it started reducing, I started appreciating the incompleteness of my science. 10 लोगों को ये दिया, किताब तो ये कहती है, लेकिन 5 को ही होता है, बाकी 5 को कुछ और होता है. Then I started understanding that देखो, I'm practicing a comparatively incomplete science. This realization, I think, is very important. At that stage, I was still at a point where there were many more senior people than me, and I thought, if I don't know, someone else will know. So I used to phone and ask, "Sir, can I ask you a question? ये ऐसे हुआ है." After some years, I realized that nobody knows. ये अगर नहीं समझाए तो chances है कि किसी को नहीं पता. So I appreciated the incompleteness of the science. When I appreciated the incompleteness of the science, I developed an understanding for the importance of compassion. Because I knew that me and my books and my colleagues together cannot help everybody for everything. So at least I can talk well to them. At least I can try and understand what is happening to them. And I think that is where the scientist in me had an added element of healer. And I think it took a good 2 decades. I don't think it came quickly. I don't think it matured quickly. And I think lastly now, last few years, I find that I can put the patient ahead of myself, which in my life actually came as a last frontier. Originally, when I started and patients started coming, see, it's a funny world. When patient starts coming, you feel good. Maybe I'll take the Harish Shetty route a little bit here. Very good. So, when I started practice newly, and my wife would ask me when I came home, was it a good day? And good day meant patients came to me. I saw somebody. I said, yeah, it's a good day. Then in between, say every day was a good day. Then now when she asks, was it a good day? That means I have had enough rest. Too many people haven't come. So everything seems to go in a cycle. And in this cycle now, originally at that stage when patients started coming to me with a patient, if I diagnosed the disease, then I didn't listen to anything. This is motor neuron disease. There is no known treatment for this disease. This is your prescription. Out you go. Today, most of the patients who come to me with motor neuron disease are already diagnosed by somebody. They are on second opinion or third opinion or whatever. I don't need to diagnose them. But I talk to them. I talk to them about what is likely, how they should look at it, what does this illness mean to the whole family. Originally, when a patient of motor neuron disease asked me, "Can I come back to you?" I would say, "No, you don't need to come back. I do not have anything to offer." That was the scientist. Today, if they say, "Should I come back to you?" I say, if you feel like discussing something, you come back. Now, often they have problems that they want to talk to you. It's like going to a temple. Only God doesn't talk and you may talk. Okay. Right. Now, let me give you in a few slides, how does the society look at us? When I explained to you that there is a scientist element in us, the healer element in us, how the scientist element is trained, how the healer element comes later and variable. Now I'll tell you what the society looks at. This again, I go back to my own life. I started getting busy in medical practice by 93. I came home at 10 o'clock. Those were days of home phone, phone with lines. Cell phone had not come, pagers had not come. So my mother, whom I thank for 1,000 things, whoever phoned at home, she will talk to them. She will ask them, what is your problem? Then she will write down their name and number. As soon as I came home, she will tell me the list is there on the table. You phone them. Mom, whole day I have done this. Let me eat. She said, their problems are bigger than yours. You can eat later. My own mother. You can eat later. So if your own mother can say this, the whole society is 100% going to say, your problems are not big. Society expects you to be there all the time. Right. A little bit about role models. I personally feel that role models are extremely important in medical life. And even though people feel that there is a shortage of them, I don't think there is a shortage of them. I think there is a role model in every corner. You have to find one. In the previous time, when you finished your degree, you did an apprenticeship. What was apprenticeship? Apprenticeship was actually learning the human qualities from the master. And then you say, okay, now I am alright, I will go and do my own stuff. Today the degrees have become so long, so many degrees have to be acquired, there is no time for apprenticeship. The moment you get your certificate, you go on your own and you do what you think is right. When I look back, of course, I was very fortunate to work with Professor Vadia and Professor Singhal and Professor Kathak. But if I look back today on a difficult situation, like today morning just before coming here, I had a very difficult situation to tackle in Bombay where a politically important patient suddenly took ill. As I was going to the hospital, what crossed my mind? How would Dr. Vadia have reacted to this? So, early life parents, then medical teachers, the role models, whom you consider role models, stay with you all your life. So if it's possible, catch hold of good role models. I don't know how you will do that. I was exceptionally lucky. This is Ravi Shankar again. Will it play? I don't know. They can try, right? This is Ravi Shankar. I am asking Ravi about what is a role model. There you go. Okay, so Ravi says that the role models tell me how to apply my knowledge to situations. It's Professor Vadia, whom some of you might recognize, is no more. We did a book together, and when I was putting this photograph for this lecture, I saw that I had grown a mustache like him. I had not realized that. There was also a beard like under the boss sometimes. Okay. So what is society? What does the society expect? They want you to be. They want a healer working as a profession. They want you to know your books, but they also want you to be available, accountable, affordable, amicable, and if possible, knowledgeable. I still believe, after practicing in the private setup for a long time, that a large segment of our patients are still seeking the healer in us. Like these things we see all the time. साहब अपॉइंटमेंट नहीं है तो दूर से आया हूँ, देखोगे क्या? फीस कम दे सकता हूँ, चलेगा क्या? What are these requests? These are appeals to the healer in you, not to the scientist in you. तो यहाँ हमको समझ चाहिए कैसे I also learned in today's lecture that Hindi movies are very important. Yeah. I think let's start this again. There is a sound. I think all of you have seen this, but let me run this. Yeah. Yeah, be right. No? Oh God. some way of running this, that will be very nice. Because I can't explain this. Sorry, refresh. यहाँ तो आवाज आ रही है। Doesn't matter. I think this was very illustrative. This is from the movie Anand. This chap goes to Amitabh and says,
expert in what? कैंसर देने में या इलाज करने में? कोई बात नहीं डॉक्टर। एक नई कॉम्प्लिकेशन शुरू होती है। रिपोर्ट नहीं आती और दिन रात सुस्ती लगी रहती है। एक अच्छी तगड़ी की दवा दीजिए। दरअसल आपको अगर कोई बड़ा रंग बिरंगी टैबलेट दे दो या किसी ऐसी दवा का नाम बताओ जो 10 दुकानों में ना मिले, तभी आप खुश होंगे।
he's saying if you have some medicine, you give it to me, otherwise there are a lot of doctors in this city. So, what Amitabh is given here is a good demonstration of a scientist in a doctor. He says, तुमको कैंसर नहीं है, तो उसको तो पता है उसको कैंसर नहीं है, उसको वहाँ आके बैठ रहा है. He says, मैं तुमको कोई रंग बिरंगी गोलियां दे दूँ तो तुम खुश हो जाओगे. I'm not going to give it. Now, I look at it like this, that this is a great example of, in inverted commas, correct scientific medicine. But what's the end result? The man went away unsatisfied. What will the unsatisfied man do? Go to another doctor's room. So, the healer in him didn't manifest at all. Now let's try this. They want miracles from us. इसको आवाज नहीं होगा तो चलेगा. Then the wheelchair starts moving and whatever. So they expect a lot from us. Okay, we are entering in the organized medicine era now. It's already there in the developed world and we are rapidly moving there. What are the issues with organized medicine? Organized medicine meaning doctor is just a part of medicine. He is not medicine. Organized medicine is impersonal. It relies only completely on evidence and statistics. It is expensive. Insurance then gets a stranglehold on what you can do and what you cannot do. And there are issues of aims and objectives. Like there are private hospitals who will say, look, we need work. How you generate work is your business. So the new boy going into it will have his own issues about aims and objectives. And slowly and steadily, I think our role is going to be, in a certain way, cut to size, if you like. We're as yet not completely organized. We're getting to be organized. But there are still practices that can be solo. The autonomy can still be maintained. Like in the hospital where I work, I don't think ever I've been called by the management and asked, why are you doing this or why are you not doing that? So I think there is still role for the healer element to be expressed in India. What we have to appreciate is, when we want to be a healer and a scientist, or a scientist trained to be a healer, and our society will keep appealing to us as healers, as much as scientists. We also need to have advocacy where we can liaise with the corporates in a manner in which we can express. Like last week's example, one patient died under my care in Bombay Hospital. The admin says unless his charges are paid, please don't release the body. Can I do that? If I take it on me, I will pay the bill. So, issues like this we need to sort out as doctors together. Look, you can't just make us a scapegoat for everything. And that's going to be more and more in the coming. So, just to recap, in the modern times for medicine, I think we all are very good scientists. I think we have already picked the best. We have been trained into the science very well in institutions like this. There is no problem with our science or medicine, but we have completely neglected and need to overhaul the other element of a doctor, the healer. I think while we embrace the organized medicine, which is inevitable, I think from our early medical days, we need to bring in the healer and train ourselves to be healer, because I think the soul of medicine is the healer. Let's nurture it as much as we cherish and nurture our science. I just try to show you some photographs. This is Professor Sotur, with whom I did my MD in medicine. These are my teachers and heads of the department, G.S.MEDICAL Neurology. It's the most peculiar department that in 60 years there were only 5 heads. I don't know how many such examples are there. This is Professor Kapuras and young me with Marty. And these are all the people who helped me put these concepts together. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. KHADILKAR, for this highly insightful presentation. So I would request you to please be seated on the dais. I would now request our chairpersons for the oration, Dr. Nilma Shrisagar and Dr. Sangeeta Rawat, to felicitate Sir. I request Dr. Nirmala Rege, Professor and Head, Department of Pharmacology and Therapeutics, to present mementos to our chairpersons as a token of our appreciation.